Madam Mayor, should we get started?
Sure.
Okay, why don't I, since I think even though we're in your conference room, I think the council's hosting this time. So I'll just kind of call this to order. I'm usually brief with introductory remarks, but I did want to say to everybody, happy Thanksgiving. And I hope everybody is going to eat well and enjoy the holidays and give thanks. I also want to acknowledge several of us, and I believe, Mayor, that Betsy Cavendish from your office was at a, I guess we'd call it a press briefing rally this morning over at 441 4th Street to kick off, so to speak, the oral argument this morning on the voting rights litigation that Appleseed initiated in federal court. So we wish them the best with the oral arguments today. I also want to note that I think most of the items on the agenda today are yours, except for the updates at the end from the Attorney General, but I'm hopeful that we will end. I want to kind of set a goalpost of ending at 11 o'clock this morning. So those are my introductory remarks. Mayor, do you have?
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. I am very pleased to be here with members of my team to provide a couple of briefings to the council. I think some of which you requested that we add to the agenda. I too want to wish all of our team, the 37,000 people who work for us and provide services to the people of the District of Columbia, a very happy Thanksgiving. Also pleased, as they were informed a couple of weeks ago, because we have enjoyed an exceptional year with WNBA champions, with World Series champions, and with public school children champions who are excelling beyond most of their colleagues nationally. The government will extend the holiday and also have Friday as a holiday for DC government workers. So we are very happy about that. We are also pleased, and you're going to hear a little bit more from Superintendent Hansel Kane about the performance of our schools as reflected in our report card. But I know we all read with interest and happiness and pride the results of a recent Washington Post poll that revealed that 92% of public school parents in DC regard their child's school as excellent or good. I don't have to remind anybody of what those numbers were like 10 years ago when this government embarked on an incredible investment in our future and in our schools. So I am grateful to the taxpayers of the District of Columbia for their investment, but also grateful to the partnership of the council that has allowed for this type of innovation and investment, and quite frankly, mayoral and council accountability to parents in the district for how our schools advance. I am also happy to introduce you to a couple of new members of our team. I hope you have by now met Garrett Lee, who has joined the Office of the Senior Advisor as the Chief of Staff. Garrett Lee is behind me. Thank you, Garrett, and welcome. I would also like to introduce the Acting Director of the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens. I think you know that our former director has moved on to accept an exciting scholarship, and we have hired Lamont Carey. So Lamont, welcome. Lamont brings a wealth of experience in engaging with returning citizens in life skills and workforce programs, and we look forward to his work with our community. There are a number of cabinet members, as I mentioned, who are here, who, while not on the agenda, may also be available if there are questions that we need them to answer. We also have on the agenda the violence prevention and intervention funding and expansion, and we are prepared to talk about the Pathways program that is managed out of the ONE's office, and we know that members of the council may want to be a part of this discussion. And the Office of the Attorney General may want to be a part of this discussion. So I might actually start by kicking it to members of the council who want to address expanded funding, and then we're happy to talk about pathways and have the Attorney General talk, and then we will turn to Superintendent Kang and Director Muriel, who I have asked to be here to update us. I got a very exciting update from DDOT on the planning for the K Street Transitway, and I thought it would be helpful for you to hear it as well. So with that, I want to see if the council has any remarks to start on 2020 funding expansion.
Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank you for the investments that you've announced just yesterday or today regarding additional cameras. I wanted to ask what crimes you think the cameras will best address, what types of crime, what the strategy is for using them, and what's different about the technology with these new cameras.
Chief, or Captain, we'll start, and Chief may want to add.
I'll start with some of that, and the Chief is behind me to add. In terms of the technology, the cameras are an upgrade in the technology that we've had in crime cameras. One, the resolution is much higher, is much more consistent with the kind of high definition technology we're used to seeing. This will make facial recognition easier when police put something out to the public and ask for help. Second, the cameras come with technology where if they're located near a shot spotter, and many of them are or will be, if there's a gunfire, the camera will tilt automatically and zoom in to the area where they hear the gunfire comes from. So this will allow for more relevant information to get captured on camera. Is there any other technology, Chief?
No, that's it. But we looked at 2018 homicides, and we looked at the cases where video footage was helpful in resolving those cases. In about 70% of the 2018 homicides, we had 160 homicides, about 132 of those homicides. We had video that was helpful in the case, and in about 40% of those cases, the video was significant enough to help us close the case. So you had asked initially what the crimes we're going to be focused on. It's particularly shootings that are occurring in our city. That is the most prevalent statistic we have this year. If you look at overall crime for this city and you compare it to last year, we're going to be about flat. December is not going to change our numbers that much. We have an increase in homicides, and we also have an increase in shootings. So primarily it's going to be violent crimes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That was exactly what I wanted to know.
If there aren't other comments from members, why don't we proceed?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. McDuffie?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you, Madam Mayor. First, we had I thought, a really productive public safety walk over in Ward 5 in the Edgewood neighborhood yesterday, where you made the announcement about the cameras, and I'm happy to know that the cameras that we're going to be installing are going to be the high definition type. I know there have been a lot of folks, victims in particular, who've raised concerns in the past about, some of the video footage that have captured, unfortunate incidents, including their family members. So this is good news, and I think the cameras obviously balance out the other work that has taken place with Director McFadden and the folks in the Office of Neighborhood Safety and the Attorney General's office. I did want to hear at some point, and I don't know if you all are planning to present or just the idea was to be questions. Are y'all planning to present first? Because I don't want to ask questions if there's going to be a presentation. Okay. I'll wait. I'll hold my question.
So that's where I was trying to go. Councilmember White?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Mayor. During the presentation, I hope you can talk about a comprehensive approach to crime. Certainly, I think we're moving in the right direction, increasing the money for cameras, increasing funding for violence intervention. All these things obviously work in concert, and obviously council members, and I'm positive you are hearing increased concerns from communities about increases in violence. The chief is right. Our numbers in homicides have not gone up. Don't look like they're going to go up from last year, but it's still a precipitous jump from 2017. It's still obviously a significant concern. And one of the difficulties for the council, it's a difficulty for the administration as well, is that as we're hearing from residents about concerns about public safety, we're also hearing from residents about concerns regarding policing. And one incident is the one that was reported in the Washington Post last week, where a 15-year-old girl and her 10-year-old brother were apprehended by officers in a way that I think was highly inappropriate and counterproductive. And so these things really require balance. And so I wonder if you can speak more broadly to what our comprehensive approach is.
Sure. Our presentation will be focused on the Pathways program, but we're happy to talk to you and all of you about all of our approaches.
Sure. I don't know if there's going to be a slide to pull up. I'm going to briefly talk about just the facts of the intervention contracts that the One's office has, and Director McFadden will go into Pathways. The first slide here just sort of lays out two pieces of information that many council members ask me: what is the budget and what are the neighborhoods? Between FY19 and FY20, a mixture of recurring and one-time money, the budget increased $1.6 million from $2.1 million to $3.8 million. The neighborhoods that you see there are the neighborhoods that the contractors are working on related to violence intervention work. There are 3 contractors. The award was done through a competitive bid. It's the same vendors that were there in FY19. And the additional funding allows for those contractors to hire more full-time staff, more part-time staff, and importantly allows the One's office to be able to deepen their involvement in the neighborhoods, in particular focused on connecting individuals who are caught up in violence to services. A number of the funding will go to case managers that the nonprofits will have that can connect back some of the other government services that are vital to giving people a pathway out. And speaking of pathways, this is where I will turn it over to Director McFadden.
Good morning. Good morning. So how many people are familiar with the Pathways program? Everyone in here should be familiar. And we are excited about FY20, and we are excited about some of the success that we have thus far. However, we still have a long ways to go and have to touch a lot more people. As you see, phase one of the Pathways program is basically 9 weeks of intensive services and supports to Tier 1, Tier 2 individuals. And these are individuals who have a background of demonstrating certain behaviors in our communities. And so we work to provide every wraparound services and create a hub of support for these individuals. And I'll talk more about those wraparound services on the next slide. So they're with us for 9 weeks, receiving those services and supports. Phase 2 is subsidized work. So for 6 months, they'll be placed in a government agency or a community-based organization doing work that they're interested in. So if they're interested in painting, they're interested in work at DPW, if those opportunities are available, we work on placing them there so they can get that work experience. Phase 3, Phase 3, long-term retention and support services aimed at ensuring participants successfully transition to full-time gainful employment. And so even after they leave the 6 months of programming, we continue to reach back They continue to get case management services and supports. And if things come up that they continue to need supports and services, we'll bring them back in to support them in addition to what we've provided thus far. Okay, wraparound services. Pathways offers extensive wraparound services for participants. So mental health services, trauma-informed care. We have Dr. Helen Williams, who works at our office, supporting these young men as much as possible. 72% of their mental health services is cognitive behavior therapy, which is proven to be extremely impactful with this population. They also have 2 groups of mental health supports as well, and a one-on-one. Clothing and uniforms, we take these guys out and get them suits, clothes, everything that they need to go on interviews and be successful. Food and nutrition, we provide a meal, extremely important as well. CSOSA, our relationship with CSOSA is incredible. Half or more than half of the participants in the Pathways program are referred by CSOSA, and these individuals are from their intensive and maximum category as far as the participants in the program. So we're happy about that relationship. Case management, we work on individual development plans, looking at milestones, life goals, just a whole lot of work that goes into this. Continuing education, we have RC re-engagement that's in the building, so we work on the educational enrichment pieces, and thus far we have 2 individuals who received their GEDs, and on this 4th cohort, we may have 4 to 5 individuals who received their GEDs. Transportation benefits, as you know, for this population, there are a lot of safety concerns and issues. And so we have to make sure people move about in the city in a manner that's safe, and we have to have safety plans. And assist picking them up and dropping them off as well. A lot of Uber and Lyft involved here. Family support services, we can't just help the individual, we have to assist the foundation. And this is going into the households. We work with our credible messengers who do house visits, who call the individuals in the mornings, support them during the holidays and weekends and evenings as well if they have issues. Okay, continuous improvement in FY20. Vocational training. ONES is introducing a barber and carpentry program for the Pathways participants. This will be in-house because we have to get career tracks for individuals to leave. When they leave the office, we want to make sure that they can go and compete into the real world. The curriculum-based program is designed to provide required skills for all those participants that come through the program. Mental health support and services, extremely important. A lot of our guys suffer from trauma, unresolved childhood issues, and we cannot assist them in being stable until we address these very acute issues. Research and evaluation. In FY20, ONES kicked off a 2-year partnership with Johns Hopkins University, very important. Government Excellence, GovX, they will be guiding ONES through a 360-degree assessment of data practices. ONES is also partnering with the lab, DC, to evaluate the Pathways program. And finally, I would like to provide some of the outcomes of the Pathways program. As of present, we have less than a 7% recidivism rate with cohorts 1 to 3, which is incredible. As I stated, 2 ambassadors completed their GEDs, 9 ambassadors obtained their driver's license, 15 ambassadors completed their supervision with CSOSA, 81 ambassadors received their OSHA 10 certifications, and 38 ambassadors received their flaggers certification. So we are extremely happy about this work. We'll continue to push forward for FY20. We have a lot of great things in place, and we look forward to moving forward with this incredible work. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there more with regard to your presentation, or should I turn to the Attorney General?
That's all.
Mr. Attorney General?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stuff together here. Threw me off there. Good morning, Mayor Bowser, Chairman Mendelson, and members of the council and staff and others who are present today. We at the Office of Attorney General are pleased to discuss OAG's Violence Interruption Initiative, better known as Cure the Streets. Let me first thank the mayor again for her investment in violence interruption through the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. We're honored to work in partnership with Director McFadden, for whom we have tremendous respect, and his outstanding team. And I think the more that we collaborate, the better we are. And I want to let everyone know here that that is our mode of operation. Collaboration, mutual support, constructive criticism, all with the goal to get better, both of us. In that regard, I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight Kevin Donahue, the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety, and his steadfast and consistent work at really getting us all to be on the same page on collaboration. Thanks, Kevin. Council, I just thank you all for the initial allocation to the Office of Attorney General way back in June of 2018 to get us started. And then, of course, additional monies that would allow us to expand from the 2 sites that we launched around August, September 2018 to 4 additional sites that we're in the process of launching now. Obviously, last Friday, we had a significant tragedy that occurred at one of our training sites after the training, where a violence interrupter trainee was gunned down. Clearly that was a distressing, disturbing, and destabilizing event. We got support immediately from MPD and the police chief, as well as Chief Conte, which we appreciate. I want you to know that everybody has come together. Del, we appreciate your visit last night to see the team. And then yesterday, during the day, we had a large turnout of almost all of the violence interrupters and outreach workers, really around just a grief session where folks could talk out their feelings as to what occurred on Friday. Also, I want to thank Kenyon McDuffie and Trayon White, both of whom rushed to the scene of the incident and then later to the hospital, where we were able to spend time with the Venable family. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jason Downs. Jason Downs is to my left. He is the new General Counsel at the Office of Attorney General. Don't hold it against him that he went to law school with Kenyon McDuffie. But I've been trying to recruit Jason in different jobs for the last 10 years, and finally got a chance to have him sign on. Jason was a founding partner at his own firm, Downs & Collins. He's an excellent litigator and trial lawyer, civil, criminal litigation, 10 years at the Public Defender Service, a master at jury trials, teaching at Harvard Law School and a bunch of other schools. So it's going to be fun for you all, I think, to work with and meet Jason in the future. Jason's responsibilities will also include adding additional management to Cure the Streets. And we're going to need additional management, obviously, when you expand from 2 to 6. So with that, let me turn it over to Jason. You'll probably hear my voice interject, hopefully not during your presentation, but at some point.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General, and thank you all for your willingness to learn a bit more about our Cure the Streets model. And as you may know, the model is based out of the University of Chicago. It actually stems from a medical physician who studied infectious diseases in parts of Africa. And what he learned from studying infectious diseases is that the pattern of behavior is the same as it relates to violence. In other words, the pattern of violence follows the same pattern of infectious diseases. Infectious diseases start local, they start small, and they spread to the rest of someone's body. And that's exactly what violence is doing here in the district. It starts with a small group of people and it infects the entire community. So what Violence Interruption and Cure the Streets seeks to do is employ the same methods that we use to attack infectious diseases to attack violence here in the district. And to do that, we have violence interrupters. And what they seek to do is they seek to identify high-risk individuals, people that are known to be engaged in violent behavior or will find themselves may find themselves the victims of violence, identify those persons, wrap their arms around them, and give them services prior to the violence even occurring. In other words, stemming the violence, stopping it before it even starts. And to do that, we can't do it alone. We are partnering with the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, and we appreciate that partnership. We are also partnering with NARC, the National Association for the Advancement of Returning Citizens. In that partnership, they've been with us from the very beginning. They were there when we launched the first 2 sites, one in Ward 5 and one in Ward 8. We appreciate their partnership. We appreciate their leadership. Speaking of expanding, we also have expanded to include new co-chiefs or co-directors of our violence reduction program. First, we have Alan James. Alan James comes to us from New York City. Thank you for joining us, Alan. We are very lucky to have him. In his prior role, he was responsible for ensuring that over 200 violence interrupters in New York City received the services they need, because these violence interrupters are exposed to violence themselves. They place themselves in harm's way without bulletproof vests, without guns, without helmets. So they need mental health services as well. And Alan was responsible for coordinating that for over 200 people. He was also in charge of 23 violence interruption sites in New York City. So his expertise will be integral in expanding violence interruption here in the district, and we appreciate your leadership. We also have LaShawna Thompson-L, DC native. In her previous role, she was with the Office of the Attorney General, and she was working with us in the Restorative Justice Program, where she helped facilitate and help actually start the pilot programs here in the district as it relates to CURE. And we appreciate your leadership so far. We're looking forward to working with you in this capacity, so thank you very much. And we also, one more, we also have LaToya Thompson. And LaToya comes to us from the Office of the Deputy Mayor, Planning and Economic Development, where she administered several multi-million-dollar development grants for the district. So we appreciated LaToya Hampton. I knew I was gonna mess up your last, somebody's name, so I apologize. I thought it was gonna be LaShawna, it's actually LaToya. Sorry about that, it's LaToya Hampton. We appreciate you joining the team. We're gonna need you moving forward, so thank you very much. So we mentioned earlier that we had initial sites. If you look at the green sites, those were the very first 2 sites. First, we had a site in Cluster 23, that is Trinidad in Ward 5. We also had a site in Cluster 39, that is Congress Heights in Washington Highlands. It's important to note that this is a pilot program. We just started the program last year. It has only been up and running for a year. But I am sure that there are some questions about how the program is doing so far. I'm going to give you 2 answers before you even ask. The first answer is that it's too early to tell. It's only a year. But the second answer, the more detailed answer, is if you look at the preliminary numbers, we can use a sample from Cluster 23. Gun homicides are down from 38%. ADW guns are down 18%. And gun robberies are down 13%. So what does that mean? Does that mean that this is the end-all, be-all, that we know for sure that violence interruption is the end to all violence in DC? No. The numbers are just too preliminary. When I say that gun homicides are down 38% in Cluster 23, that specifically means that last year this time there were 8 homicides, now we're at 5. When I say ADWs are down 18%, it was 34 last year, we're down to 28. Gun robberies last year, 40 this time last year, we're down to 35. What that tells you is that the sampling is too small. So we're encouraged that the numbers are decreasing, the trend is going downward. However, the sampling is too small. Medical science would tell you, social science would tell you that we do not have enough information. We've got more work to do, and we're looking forward to continuing our partnerships to do so. If you look at the yellow sites is where we have added cure sites. We have one in Ward 5, Truxton Circle, another in Ward 7, Marshall Heights, 2 more in Ward 8, Bellevue and Washington Highlands. And it's important for us to talk about how we actually selected these sites. To do so, we used information from the Metropolitan Police Department. We looked at homicide rates. We looked at violent crimes. We looked at shot spotter data. But we also spoke with people on the ground to gather on the ground intelligence. After doing our preliminary analysis, we spoke with several members of the council. And doing so, we compared that with the data that we had from MPD. And these are the sites that we selected. I understand and I imagine that there are some people that may not be happy with all of the sites or the sites that we selected. But we tried to be as true to the data as we possibly could. We looked at the data, we selected the sites that needed the most attention, and this is a pilot program. So we're excited about the program, we're excited about the potential to expand. But to be clear, this is the pilot. Even in the pilot phase, we are encouraged by the fact that the private sector seems to be jumping on board. The private sector has started issuing RFPs, specifically real estate developers, are issuing RFPs looking for violence interrupters surrounding their real estate investments. So we know that violence interruption must be doing something right if real estate developers, if the private sector is seeking to employ this in neighborhoods where they've invested. It must be good for business. So we're excited about the potential for more violence interrupters around the district as well. Looking at so we talked about the locations, where we are located right now. I'm going to talk a bit about the people that are helping us in those locations, because again, we can't do this by ourselves. We have community-based organizations that are located in each site. So as I mentioned earlier, the NARC, it was the first CBO to work with us. They are in Ward 8 and Ward 5, specifically in Trinidad and Ward 5, and in Congress Heights and Washington Highlands and Ward 8. Our expansion sites expanded to the locations that we discussed earlier, and the way that we chose CBOs to participate and to work with us in those expansion sites is there was a competitive process. In that competitive process, we looked at whether or not these CBOs had a demonstrated ability to connect with people in the community. Having community credibility was important in the selection process. Also, whether or not they had the ability to effectively analyze and find the at-risk persons in those communities. In addition, we were looking at whether or not they had the ability to work with a project of such a large scale and to be willing to input the data that is necessary for us to analyze the utility of the program and how we need to tweak the program. So after analyzing all of those factors, in addition to NARC, we decided on Father Factor, Murder Free DC. They are in Ward 8 in Bellevue and in Ward 5 in Truxton Circle. And we also decided on the Alliance of Concerned Men, again, a location in Ward 8, Washington Highlands, and in Marshall Heights. After selecting the CBOs in October of this year, we aggressively began staffing the sites. We just selected the CBOs in October, and the sites are fully staffed already. We hired 40 people over the last month or so, a bit longer than a month. We participated in the hiring process, but we were not alone. There were community members in the hiring process along with us, community leaders in the hiring process, and also Cure Violence staff from the national headquarters in Chicago. And so we were, it was a collaborative process, as the Attorney General mentioned earlier. We selected the CBOs that we just mentioned. And the 40 people that I just hired are broken down into two broad categories. First, we have violence interrupters. They are boots on the ground mediators. These are the people that you're going to see in the community mediating conflicts, attending community meetings, making home calls, connecting with high-risk individuals. Then we have outreach workers. The violence interrupters will provide information to outreach workers who will then connect them to services in partnership with the ONE's office. That will occur on a weekly basis. And so those categories of employees will work together with our chiefs at the Attorney General's office. We've also not only hired them, we've also trained them. And so in addition to hiring, they've undergone a 4-week training process. Now the next step is to start training the managers of these organizations. That is scheduled to occur in December of this year. After the second week of December or so, we expect to be fully operational in all 6 sites. In addition to being fully operational, we plan to continue our outreach in the community. So what we've learned is that it's important to educate the community as to what Cure the Streets actually does, how the community can benefit from it, and most importantly, how the community can participate and help us in identifying at-risk individuals, help us connect them with services, help us point us in the right direction, because we can't do this alone. So we've been in the communities, we've had community meetings, educating the community. We've also scheduled a survey to take place right after Thanksgiving to occur in all 6 sites. And the survey will ask questions of the community geared toward their current perceptions of violence, what they see, what they believe violence interruption to be, and how they believe that this is impacting their communities right now. And after conducting that survey, we plan to be able to present the results to you by the time of the oversight hearing in January of next year. With that, I'm going to stop, and we're happy to answer questions as a team, of course, but we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you, Jason.
Are there questions from members? Charles.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you to both teams for the presentation. I appreciate that. Just for a little context, I'd initially asked this to be added to our council mayor breakfast for October meeting, which ended up getting rescheduled to this one, partly because of the beginning of the fiscal year. So it made a lot of sense as we've made a significant investment both with the Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement and with the Attorney General, that it was a good opportunity to kind of have that update as we start this work and the efforts. Obviously, with the homicide last Friday, Carl, to you and your team, I know all of us have our thoughts out with you guys and the entire Venable family. And so it certainly kind of paints the urgency around the work as well. I think if anybody had a chance to read the Washington Post this morning, their poll talked about, a third of Washingtonians have either they themselves or someone they know has been impacted by gun violence. So to the point around it being that public health model, we know that that's a significant impact. I guess I kind of had 2 questions that I was going to ask. One, Dell and I, we've been in meetings before. When you say 7% has reoffended, I think you should switch that around and say 93% has not reoffended. Okay. But I know that I was going to ask if you could share a little bit more about what your experience has been now that you are about to have your 4th cohort of the Pathways participants graduate, kind of how you've been able to help better target, and as we talk about this focused effort, how you've worked to help get from cohort 1 to this cohort, those tier 1, tier 2 individuals that you're talking about, and how you've done that. And then, Kevin, another big part of what we invested was something that the mayor, you had put into the budget last year, was these kind of place-based trauma ideas, or trauma centers. And so I was going to ask if you could also talk about how you envision that linking as you work through the collaboration, how that can also link into the work that's taking place.
Yeah, I'll definitely answer that. We've had a year to assess and examine what's going on in the different communities. And so we definitely work with our contractors who are on the ground, boots on the ground, working in the trenches. And they work with identifying those individuals that we have to work with. We also work with CSOSA, who provides individuals as far as intensive and maximum categories to support them as much as possible as well. And we also have our internal violence interrupters to provide information for those key individuals, tier 1, tier 2 individuals, those influencers, and secondly, those supporting cast members that we definitely have to work with. As you know, in some of your communities, once we're able to identify those individuals and work with them and connect them, stabilize their lives, and connect them to the support services they need and build autonomy, we've seen in multiple communities the violence drop significantly. And so we'll continue to do that, continue to identify individuals and the supports and services that we need to have that warm handoff and support them and their families.
Thank you. So let me, and thank you for raising the trauma centers that the mayor put in the budget. You were completely supportive of. That'll be developed out of OVSJG, our Victim Services Office. And I would add to that the Family First Centers that will be run, I think, by CFSA. And so the way that Dallas had me think about this work, and I'll use the public health analogy, is that the interrupters are a bit like your ER trauma surgeons. If they're doing their job right, they have to keep you alive to the next day and stabilize the patient. But stabilize the person long enough to be able to go see a cardiologist, an asthma doctor, someone to deal with some of the underlying issues that is why they came in the first place. So ONES is very much connected to support services in government that helps people proceed. And so a manifestation of that will roll out officially in February, and the RFP is out there right now, which is having neighborhood-based centers in the ONES area, so I think there'll be 3 of them, that will be run by the nonprofits with credibility there and employ clinicians who will provide particularly trauma services, so mental health services related to trauma from violence. This will, as a practical matter, be an extension in the community, the sort of things that we have intensively at the Pathways program. It will allow the individuals who are employed by these nonprofits that do the intervention work to have services right there in communities to refer people to be able to do diagnosis and clinical work right there in the neighborhood. And the Family First Centers, which is really going to be a place where the broader connection to multiple services can happen, provides some of that reach back. Because ultimately, we have to give opportunities for hope for individuals, and they carry guns often out of hopelessness. So that connection from ONES back to some of the health and human services activities, some of what DOES does, is an integral part of, I think, the overall vision that the Mayor and Director McFadden have for the work.
Thanks. So, just quickly, a lot of us, I know, sat last week with Thomas Apt and had a lot of conversation around how we focus on reducing gun violence and also taking that approach of a real focus to it. And I think one of the parts of that conversation that was so important, which is why I want to ask about the place-based trauma, is that for our violence interrupters to have their maximum impact and credibility, they have to be able to have that nexus to then be able to take the person who is in trauma or who is in at risk and be able to immediately connect them to services. And if they cannot do that, then we are not empowering those violence interrupters to be able to accomplish what it is we're asking them to do, which puts them at risk, puts community at risk. And so I think that's why there's a really clear nexus here between the great work that's happening on the ground to grow the capacity and then this effort here, which will be able to make sure we're having as many meaningful, immediate supports that can go to the individuals to stop that trauma, to stop that violence, and be able to interrupt it. So I'm looking forward to that. I look forward to the partnership because I think it's an incredibly important part of making sure this all succeeds the way that we're working to. Thank you.
Kenyon, then Robert, and then we're going to move on to the next item. Kenyon? Sorry.
Thank you. I want to begin by thanking both the mayor, deputy mayor, and Director McFadden, and the Attorney General and his team for adding the new sites in Ward 5. We've had a number of challenges around the Eckington neighborhood as well as the Hanover Place neighborhood, and so I think the work that you all are going to be doing is going to be touching on those communities, and I think Langdon Park and Brentwood Saratoga has been really challenging for Ward 5, and I think the efforts there are going to be impactful, and so I look forward to working with you all on that. If you could, though, talk a little bit about how you all are collaborating. I understand from conversations that I've had both with you, Deputy Mayor, as well as Attorney General, that there have been efforts to sort of connect with each other in terms of the work. I know when the unfortunate incident happened on Friday, Dale and his team and Marcus and folks were right on top of that, and I think willing to provide some support to the folks over at the CURE program. So just to give you an opportunity, because I think that's one thing that's come out in conversations that I've had with people in the neighborhood. I know I've talked with some of my colleagues about it. What kinds of things are you all doing to collaborate, and how are you all helping each other out to make sure that the work is coordinated?
Well, let me start, and I want to thank you, Council Member, for your vision for bringing and introducing violence interruption in the city, and all the council members who have worked to fund the various programs. I think you recognize from our presentations today that there's a different structure as the council has envisioned, that the Office of the Attorney General is working several sites. We are working several sites and implementing the Pathways program and have set up, we think, a set of services at our one's location that is touching every part of the need of a intense group of high need people. That if we are successful with them, we think that not only can we stop the violence for themselves, but they have ripples throughout their communities and certainly throughout our families. And so those intense set of services available to Pathways participants is what we focused on. I think I probably had other conversations with you as well, and the Attorney General, several conversations about how we make sure that having two different programs are productive. To be very candid, I had some concerns about how this kind of rippled down to street outreach workers, and we have reasons for those concerns about various things that we heard out there. So we wanted to make sure that we presented a very unified management front because the boxes that we're talking about are important to us, but it's not important to anybody in the community. They just want to know that the work is getting done. So the Deputy Mayor convened a summit of all of the outreach workers with the Attorney General, which we thought was a very important discussion, and Kevin can talk about it a little bit more. And I had a follow-up meeting as well with representatives of various organizations to understand what exactly they were doing and how what they were doing could be better integrated to the work of the entire government. So those are a couple of things that I'm going to ask Kevin and Dale, and I'll defer to the Attorney General to talk about more practical, everyday things that they do around coordination. We do collaborate and interact in very practical ways on a very regular basis. One of the most important ways is even identifying the appropriate areas to go into. You've probably picked up here and elsewhere, so there are subtle but important differences in the models, and we can actually employ those differences quite well. What ONES does is very much designed to connect back to services. It's meant to take on a bit of a broader geographic area. What Cure the Streets does is meant to be very concentrated and very focused on some of the stickiest high shooting areas. And I think even approaching this budget year when we knew we had additional funding in both agencies, I know Dell, myself, the OAG's team, we worked very extensively in trying to look at the data to understand what neighborhood is it appropriate for the Cure the Streets to expand to, what's going to be appropriate for ONES to do. And I think we do everything in this space. I can't stress enough what the mayor said. It's important there not to be the perception or the feeling of competition. It has to be collaborative, and that has to be messaged from the very top to the workers in the trenches doing the work every day. We did have a Unity Summit, and it was the idea of the people that I work around and just having individuals in one room that work in these two programs, but I'll also add DYRS as Credible Messengers, which really has the same philosophy.
and have them in one room sharing experiences, having common training, and actually some of the most popular things they did, I think they were there for 2 full days, was processing their trauma that they have experienced together as one sort of team, even though they have different employers. So those are 2 examples of how we do it, but I can't stress enough, anytime I or anyone here hears a sense of competition, we try to squash it right away to emphasize we are doing this work together, and if we take advantage of our differences, we can actually make the best use of each particular model.
I think the most important piece is getting people in the same room. The summit supported that. And as we meet on a monthly basis, I speak to a lot of the CURE staff on a weekly basis. And so when we have incidents, we work together to do safe passages. If there's information or situations that's going on between the CURE neighborhood and the one's neighborhood, we group together to support one another. If there's services around government agencies or supports, and we get a call that someone needs housing, utilities, or assistance, we're able to work in that manner as well. But I think we'll definitely continue to move forward as the violence interrupters sit in the same rooms and break bread together and work on these very tedious issues. We'll continue to move forward in a positive manner.
I think what I would add to, those honest and fulsome remarks is that if you look at the starting point, which again was for both of us really around August, September, October of last year, I think Del will tell you, Kevin will tell you, it's not easy to launch something and get it going all of a sudden. And of course, expectations come with the notion of starting something new. Where we were, where we struggled candidly last year was in trying to really, connect up to services. But we've had the conversations that needed to be had from the top, as well as, from the street level. And I'm confident that now we are, really in sync in regards to getting the services that we need, especially, from the CURE folks. OAG doesn't have mental health services and the like, so we've got to partner, really strongly without any static, if you will, with the executive, and that's what we're doing. And I think it's only going to get better. If I can, just go one step further and say that, it's my own view that eventually could happen sooner rather than later, that the part that we're doing, should really be with the executive, because it's the executive that has that ability, and we've seen it work well, to deliver, the services in a quick way. And if we're not able to do that, in a rapid way, it does undermine, the credibility of our workers on the street. So the theme for this year is teamwork, absolutely no rivalry or competition, but moving the city forward, and just being a different kind of alternative option to support crime reduction. The police are working their tails off. I can't tell you how much respect I have for them and what they're doing and what they confront every single day. What we're trying to do is help in a non-traditional law enforcement way. And I think, the proof will be in the pudding over time. We're going to go about delivering and implementing the program consistent with the model.
So I appreciate you putting that on the record, Mr. Attorney General. I know that's a conversation that I've had with the mayor previously and with Councilmember Allen and the deputy mayor as well. But I think ultimately, most would agree who follow this work that it should fall under the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. And as the office continues to build capacity, perhaps that's something that we continue to move in that direction.
Let me add one thing, Council Member, because one thing that I have gathered over the last several months in talking to a lot of people is that we have to be careful about scaling up too quickly. So I just want to, we're not going to wake up one day and have 50 great violence interrupters that any of us would want to hire or associate with, okay? It takes time to locate them, to train them, and to make sure that they are operating with fidelity to the Cure the Violence model and to what we have laid in front of them. So I just want to say, while we have been able, I think, to roll in the additional funding, it sounds like the Attorney General has hired for those slots. I'm not exactly sure where we are with hiring, but we want to make sure that we are scaling up and adding capacity as we are able to find good people to work with.
Robert, you're the last, and then we're going to move to Ossie.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief. I want to commend the Mayor, Director McFadden, the Attorney General's team on the work that you all are doing. You're right, it hasn't been a long time, but there's been a quick investment in evolution that I'm learning even more about today, and so I want to appreciate the work that you're doing and commend you. The one question I have is about employment. So, our interest is very much around keeping our residents safe, protecting the folks who are engaged or might be victims of violence. The motivation for someone who decides, I want to work with these programs is probably a little bit different. It's probably, I know somebody who went through that program and something happened at the end. That is, I think, what's going to motivate more people. And that thing at the end is probably employment. And so do we have a plan for developing connections directly to Department of Employment Services or developing relationships with the private sector where when we feel like we've done a good job with these wraparound services, we can hand them off and start to create a sort of a pipeline and a reputation?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. So we are constantly having conversations around being able to provide full-time gainful employment for individuals who come through the program, for the ones that's ready. And we've had some good strides with placing a percentage of our individuals in full-time positions. And they are doing amazing. And so we have to figure out how do we build more private sector partnerships. We do have great partners like Spin and other businesses that support us. But we have to build it up. For FY20, we are moving from 50 participants to 75. We're doing 3 cohorts. And it's not realistic to think that we're going to be able to continue to place individuals in government jobs. And so any support, I've had conversations with the CA, and so we're working on looking at how can we identify these opportunities, because I think that's the best case scenario for an individual who spend 8 months in a week at ones in subsidy employment, and then at the end they're expecting to be able to build autonomy and take care of themselves and their family. So you're absolutely right. Thanks for asking that question.
Thank you. So let's move to Ossie. I'm trying to be mindful of time. And so we're going to have a presentation of the 2019 DC School Report Card results.
Thank you and good morning.
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 My name is Hansel Kang, and I am the State Superintendent of Education. I'm very pleased to join you this morning to share the second year of the DC School Report Card and STAR framework. I apologize. So the DC School Report Card launched for the first time in December 2019. It is a valuable tool that was developed in partnership with parents and families in order to provide comprehensive information about the performance of all of our public schools, both DCPS and DC Public Charter Schools. The report card features more than 150 data points on each school, including data and information about academic programs, extracurricular activities, parent organizations, and more. This year, the DC School Report Card has been enhanced with even more easily accessible information that was specifically requested by parents and families for parents and families. The new information includes new school programs with more detail, college enrollment rates, so the rates at which graduates from our high schools are enrolling in 2 or 4-year schools, as well as trend data over time, showing changes from last year to this year. The DC School Report Card, as I noted, includes many data points, but those among the most important include the star rating, which is a 1 to 5 star summative rating for each DCPS and DC Public Charter School. This common summative rating across all of our schools gives parents and families a snapshot and a starting point for how schools are performing and serving all of our students. The summative rating is based on the domains you see here before you, including academic achievement, academic growth, English language proficiency, school environment, and for our high schools, graduation rates. We have added new resources this year for parents and families to be able to use this information, including a new discussion guide that helps our families understand the information included on the report card, why it's important, and provide some sample questions that they may want to ask their teachers or schools. We've taken great steps to make sure that the website and our resources are accessible to families. The website is available fully in English and Spanish, and is also available with a translated template in the other most common languages. The website also renders easily on mobile devices. In 2019, I'm very pleased to share that 76 schools across DC earned 4 and 5 star ratings, the top 2 levels of ratings, which is an increase of more than 20 schools from last year. This means that now 37,000 DC students attend schools earning a 4 and 5 star rating, which is 9,100 more students than last year. I should note that much of the improvement we're seeing is in our elementary schools, where 55 elementary schools earned 4 and 5 star ratings this year, up 15 schools from last year. There are actually 2 Ward 7 elementary schools, Kimball Elementary and Burville Elementary, that each jumped 2 star ratings from 2 stars to 4 stars this year. I'm now also pleased to share that we have a 5-star school in every ward of the city. Last year we were able to share that we had at least a 4-star school in each ward, and this year we have at least 1 5-star school in each ward of the city. We've also seen great improvements over time. So 27% of our DC schools improved by 1 or more star ratings since last year. And in fact, in our schools in Wards 7 and 8, just over 30% of those schools improved by 1 or more stars, so even greater improvement than we saw citywide. We will also later today be launching our 2nd year of the DC All-Star School Tour, which is a chance to highlight 10 schools from across the city that are doing an outstanding job of serving different groups of students. We will be starting the All-Star School Tour this afternoon at Center City Congress Heights in Ward 8. And you can see we will be visiting a range of schools across elementary, middle, and high school, both DCPS and DC Public Charter Schools. We are excited to visit these schools that are doing an outstanding job of serving our students and to learn from the work that they do and share those best practices with other schools and educators. Finally, I'm proud to say that in the first year of the DC School Report Card, more than 62,000 people have used the site. That is unique visitors. So we know that this tool that we built in partnership with parents and families is being used as a resource by our community to access information about all of our schools. The website is now live, dcschoolreportcard.org, with the 2nd year of data, and I encourage all of you to take some time to visit the site and learn more about the performance of all of our schools. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions? Mr. Grasso.
I just want to say congratulations to all of the schools. I mean, this, I think, shows great improvement in our city. And obviously, there's still work to do, but this is really amazing work. Superintendent Kane, can you talk a little bit about what happens to the supports for the schools that went either from 1-star to a 2-star or maybe have fallen back, and what do they get now in terms of federal support? Does it continue from last year or not, and how does that work?
Yes, thank you for the question. So as you noted, this is in part, this website is in part to fulfill some federal requirements that we have under the Every Student Succeeds Act. One of those federal requirements is to identify the schools in the bottom 5% of overall performance. Those schools are known as comprehensive support schools. They were identified last year, and that designation stays in place for a 3-year period. So we are continuing to work with those schools that were identified in the bottom 5%, they have been given access to over $11 million worth of federal funding to use over that 3-year period. And each of the schools has developed a school improvement plan together with their school communities. Those plans are available on OSSI's website to use those resources in the ways that they think are best to meet the needs of their students and their educators.
And thank you. And lastly, can you just give a description of how the STAR framework is going to evolve over the next year? I know, talked a lot about it in the committee about how there's going to be expenditures, how schools spend their money incorporated. Can you just talk about the rollout of that and what it looks like?
Absolutely. So one of the federally required elements that we will be adding later this year is around expenditures at the school level. So this is not budgeted information, it is actual expenditures at the school level for all of our public schools, both DCPS and DC public charter schools. If you go on the website, there's actually a field for that financial information that notes that information will be added this spring. It will be data from last school year, the 18-19 school year, but because of the timeline of financial audits and closing of books, that information will be added this spring, and we know that is something that many of our community members are eager to see.
Thank you.
Other questions from members? Councilmember Silverman?
Thank you for the presentation. So what have we learned from Burville and Kimball? They jumped 2 stars. Data is important, but it's supposed to inform us of what to do and what not to do. So what can we learn from those 2 schools that can then help other schools?
So as I noted, we are really excited this afternoon to launch the DC All-Star School Tour. One of the purposes of this tour for myself and my team is to be able to visit the school, highlight the school's progress in certain areas, but also to be able to ask the school what has led to that progress. And Kimball Elementary will be one of the schools that we are visiting. What I can share from last year's tour is we saw some common themes across the schools that we visited. One theme we saw was just a deep and fundamental belief that all students can learn and achieve at high levels, and that belief was translated into action by the principal, the leadership team of the school, and educators, and you saw it in practice in their school, in their classrooms. Another focus that we saw was an intentional focus on continuous improvement and how they could get better over time. They were focused on understanding their own data and how to improve. And there are several other themes that we detailed in our DC All-Star School Tour report, and we will be issuing a second report this year.
Let me ask the Chancellor also to weigh in.
Good morning. So can speak specifically, for example, to Kimball Elementary. As the superintendent highlighted, what we see in schools that have had tremendous gains is the intentional instructional planning. Particularly at Kimball, they've done a lot around STEM education, and the professional learning there has supported not only embedding and integrating STEM-based education in the classroom, but also helping the educators better understand misunderstanding and using data to inform instruction. I'm really proud that the leadership for the school has really invested in providing teachers ample time to have those conversations. We have already started principals sharing with other principals that have success. So there are other elementary schools, middle schools, and then we're in our redesign process for our high school and think about how we improve their performance as well.
And Kimball did that while they were in swing space.
They did do that in swing space. What's fascinating about Kimball is they had an opportunity to have a heavy footprint on the modernization of their facility, which incorporates their STEM-based learning. And so you can see that evidence throughout their building. And we are encouraging more and more schools to think about how they take on a particular instructional focus, which provides a guide for how teachers think about planning and instructional delivery.
Any other council members? Thank you, Superintendent Kang. Thank you, Chancellor Farabee. Thank you, Mayor Bowser. Then let's turn to the update on the K Street Transit Way.
Good morning.
Morning.
Jeff, before you get started, I just wanted to mention again that I recently convened about 50 DDOT engineers to talk about outstanding DDOT projects from roads, sidewalks, trails, and major infrastructure changes like the one proposed for K Street that we discussed with the council. And I was very pleased with some of the work that DDOT has done. And I know the engagement with the community, business, and property owners surrounding this infrastructure is also in its early stages, and I thought it would be helpful to talk about it here.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. As we all know, the current configuration of K Street Northwest from 9th Street to approximately 21st Street doesn't work for very many people. It's often gridlocked for buses. The service lanes are confusing and not really designed with the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists in mind. So our team at DDOT has been working hard on a major redesign of the entire corridor. And that redesign will include some unique elements for our city. First and foremost, it will include a dedicated two-way center-running bus lane, and that will be coupled with dedicated two-way center-running bicycle lane. We'll be removing the existing service lanes, which will allow us to include updated streetscape and landscaping and stormwater elements as well. The importance of this project is really to make it safer, easier, faster, more reliable for people to move safely through the downtown area. We know that the bus and bike lanes combined can move upwards of 4 to 8 times more people than just dedicated vehicle lanes alone. And this corridor carries upwards of 20,000 daily bus passengers. And as we are redesigning the corridor, we're taking into consideration some of the biggest concerns that currently exist: commercial loading and unloading in particular, passenger pickup and drop-off, and working to incorporate those in an updated fashion into how we're designing this project. This project, when completed, will benefit residents of all 8 wards of our city. Carries upwards of 55 buses per hour, more than 12 existing bus routes, as you can see by this map, that touch multiple points of origination throughout the district. And as the mayor mentioned, we're working hard at DDOT to deliver projects in a faster way. We are in process now designing the initial concept, bringing it to 30% design, which we anticipate will be complete this coming spring. From there, we'll move it to final design with the goal of getting shovels in the ground in the year 2021. We've held several public meetings, most recently last week, an open house that was very well attended. We heard a lot of very strong, positive feedback for the concept, a lot of great ideas. And as the mayor mentioned, we'll be continuing that level of engagement with businesses, with residents, with other stakeholders to ensure that we've got their full participation and buy-in for the project as we move it forward. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions? Councilmember Evans. Oh. If I hand you the mic, I can't get it back. Thank you. And first of all, thank you, Mayor and Mr. Meridian, for that presentation. As you know, the entire project is in Ward 2, and we're very excited about moving forward as quickly as possible. K Street is quite a bottleneck at almost all hours of the day. It's a road I travel, and what could be a 10-lane road is reduced to almost zero when the service lanes are taken out, the place where the trees are, leaving 4 lanes in the middle. One is generally blocked by a delivery truck, and the other lane is blocked by a vehicle making a left turn. And so it brings traffic to a complete standstill. And as you're right, as such, the buses, nothing can get through. So this design has been long in the making, and we're very excited about moving forward on it. As an example of something that seems to be working better now, the dedicated bus lanes that we put in on some of the other streets, H Street and I Street. And what I've witnessed is, as time goes on, we're having less people block the dedicated bus lanes. And maybe you've seen the same thing since we had the trial program in the summer and now have made it permanent. And so just drove down I Street the other day, and I was pleased to see that the bus lane there were cabs, et cetera, that were using it, probably shouldn't have been, but it was not blocked up as it had been when we first put the program in place. So we're very excited about this. People in the ward are excited about us, and we look forward to
working with you to get this thing done as soon as possible. So thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Allen?
Thanks. Thanks, Jeff. I also strongly support what you're doing there on the K Street Transitway. And Ms. Mayor, glad that you put that in the budget and have tried to push hard on this. I think it's a great thing to do, and I think it'll help K Street. I was going to ask Jeff if you could just expand a little briefly, because I think if we can show that we can get this right and have it work well on K Street, it also helps us think about bus rapid transit along other corridors in the city. Because if we can do it on K Street, we should be able to figure out how to do it anywhere else. Because that's a tough one to get right. Can you talk a little bit more, though, about how do you see this helping pave the way, as it were, for
Sure.
other bus rapid transit investments?
Sure. Well, this project is unique because it does involve heavy construction. We'll be moving concrete medians. We'll be adding additional curb and making some significant pedestrian safety improvements at each of these intersections. The mayor has tasked us with identifying other corridors where we can replicate the H&I Street model, which does not involve construction, relatively low cost, and quick implementation. So we have a team that's hard at work now at DDOT that's looking for those quicker build opportunities, and I suspect that over the next year we'll be able to announce where there will be some of those types of projects that we can deploy with much less capital investment and much less construction time.
Yeah. I think it's great. I mean, obviously, we don't have to rebuild the roadway for every single one of them, but I would love to work with you on, obviously, areas in Ward 6, but anywhere where we need to be making these investments, because I think that we can, the future is going to be how we move people around for our city, obviously, using our buses. And I think it's a great way that we'd invest that and have, of course, the coordination with Ramada to make sure that we're planning for this so that we have the number of buses, the drivers, the routes that then we'll be able to utilize the bus rapid transit the right way. Thanks.
Any other members have questions? Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Then we will turn to updates from the Attorney General.
Yeah, and I'll be quick here, just to give you some updates as to some of our matters, all really with the goal of working with the administration and the council to let the residents of the District of Columbia know who may be impacted by certain things that we're following, that they should really contact us so that we can do the investigation and, hold folks accountable where necessary. First, we had gotten council money and support last year to get more FTEs in regards to elder justice and curbing the financial exploitation of our seniors. We really are up and running. We just hired a chief there, Amy Mix, who's quite well known in the elder community. We have one lawyer embedded at the Office of U.S. Attorney because we're concerned about the lack of prosecutions around elder crime. I can report that we've got over a dozen criminal felonies in the pipeline that prosecutor is investigating, and so we look forward to moving forward on those matters. Civil rights section is also up and running. Michelle Thomas, excellent leader of that group. You may have seen us active in regards to source of income discrimination, which is really, really pervasive in the District of Columbia. And I think it's pervasive partly because there's ignorance in the business community as well as with our residents as to what's lawful and what's not. That's why we're bringing actions, and that's why we're looking to combine and collaborate with folks like Zillow and Apartments.com to get the word out in a broad way that in the District of Columbia, source of income discrimination is illegal and cannot be a barrier for somebody seeking housing. In addition, we're focused, as always, on wage theft. I brought a case just the other day on regards to DoorDash, which was taking tips and giving it to itself and not to workers. I want to point out that there are oftentimes cases we bring, there are oftentimes cases we don't bring because the companies exercise responsibility and actually fix the problem. Sadly, in a case like DoorDash, you can assume that our attempts to settle the matter was not successful, so we'll just litigate. I think you should also look out for the work that we're going to be doing around children's safety. In that regard, we're announcing a lawsuit today, and we're bringing against Juul. We've had several conversations with folks around the table around that, but Juul, of course, was hiding the fact that it had nicotine at a high level, and was marketing, we believe, to young people, clearly with all kinds of flavors, mango and the like, that young people really take to. There are estimates that in our schools, up to 50% of young people have actually tried a Juul or e-cigarette product. We have a youth group that we stay in touch with throughout the year, high school students at the Office of Attorney General. They meet with us on a quarterly basis. Last meeting just a couple weeks ago, they reported that so many of their colleagues are experiencing withdrawal from trying to, get off of Juul. They actually have a name for it. What do they call it? Nick. Again, I don't know the basis of the name, but it's a real big issue in the schools, and so we think that, a lawsuit has a way of focusing attention. Lastly, obviously, in the housing area, focusing on that. Happy to almost be finished with Sanford Capital. There are a couple more cases there that are coming to resolution. I think there'll be some interesting and good announcements coming up in the next week or a couple in regards to some settlements there. And then finally, we are going down to the Fourth Circuit in Richmond on December 12 before the entire Fourth Circuit panel to rehear our emoluments case against the president. And I think we're going to have a real good panel as opposed to the first panel of three that we had. Let's just say we drew an unlucky hand. So that's a quick report.
Is that en banc?
Pardon?
En banc?
En banc, yeah. So there'll be 14 judges, the entire Fourth Circuit.
That's a lot of judges.
It's a lot of judges, a lot of ropes.
Are there questions from members, or Madam Mayor, do you have any questions? The Attorney General?
I don't.
Councilmember Silverman and Downs?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. I want to return to the violence reduction because I didn't have a chance to ask. So on the street, what is the difference between somebody who would interact with a Cure the Streets person as opposed to someone from the one's office? What's the difference?
Del, do you want to go first? Would you like me to go first?
There's really not a difference.
Okay.
The goal of a violence interrupter is to build a relationship with Tier 1 high-risk individuals and be able to foster a relationship where they're willing to walk to services and supports.
I see.
And so that's the job of the violence interrupter, to build that relationship, hand them over to a case manager, but also intercept when there's issues around violence and something is about to happen. We want to get to a point where the individual is saying, this is about to happen, so that we can prevent the situation. So it's the same strategy.
I think the most significant difference is that the one's office, by definition, has a broader kind of geographic map that it's focusing on. Whereas the Cure the Streets team is really, really localized in a small geographic area. But in a real way, as Del stated, the work of the interrupters is quite similar. And we're getting trained, I think, in ways that are also quite similar.
Okay, so the training is the same, the interaction is the same. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, somewhat. There are some differences, as Mr. Racine just stated. When you look at the Cure model, is micro blocks in a certain community, and one's focus on multiple communities that's at odds. So there are some differences as far as the model, but as far as the training, the goal is to intercept these situations before they happen. That is the ultimate goal.
Okay. So my follow-up, I just want to say one thing on the employment piece that my colleague asked about. So we had a hearing on Project Empowerment, which most of the participants in Project Empowerment have had some interaction with the criminal justice system. I think encouraging employers and being in sectors where there is work that's expanding and offers opportunity not just for an immediate job, but for a career is critical. I was interested in the focus on barbering and carpentry, because those really aren't high demand sectors in our economy. So, as opposed to other construction-related, infrastructure-related fields, as we have at the Infrastructure Academy, I know there are issues in healthcare in terms of background checks and so forth, but I guess just quickly why those two fields?
Well, we wanted to definitely look at the fields based on the criminal background of our individuals. And so we have to look at places, when you look at carpentry, working with the carpentry union, that's not an issue. When you look at barbering to be an entrepreneur, that's not an issue. And also looking at some STEM opportunities as well to bring into the office. So we're willing to sit down. If there's other avenues and opportunities, we're open for it, because we have to place these individuals and assist them in helping themselves get into positions.
Terrific, thank you.
No problem.
And thank you, Mr. Attorney General.
Councilmember Bonds?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you very much, Mayor, for the information this morning from the agencies. It's very important that we have this opportunity. I said to the chairman, I just hope in the future we'll have maybe 2 items so that we can go a little more in depth, because this is such an important time for us at the council. Not all of us get to go to all of the hearings, and not all of us are closely affiliated with the various issues that present themselves in the various oversight hearings. So I thank you very much. I just want to give a very strong shout out for the One's Office. I've visited a few times and am very familiar with their model. And I just really celebrate the fact that the work you're doing is really changing the lives of those that participate. My question is, how do we, as you say, very gently gas up with more individuals that go through the program, because we know across the city, and particularly in some of our neighborhoods that have less of financial rewards, that the issue of preventing and providing new models is very important. So I hope that as you add your 4th class, you'll add a 5th class, and we will continue to grow. And I'd like to see a little more interaction with the CURE model, and hope that the CURE model will also look at our young people, our juveniles, particularly those that are coming out of the youth rehabilitation services. I think galvanizing their interests early will make a big difference as to the direction that they will take for their lives and how they treat their community. And we may, Mayor, have to create some specialty program. I recall, I guess decades ago, a couple of decades ago, we thought about a program where we were doing something. This is prior to Casey Trees. Maybe we'll plant trees in a certain portion of the city as a project to introduce young people to the opportunity of the work world, really learning the disciplines. And you should know that I am a proud recipient of the DC Empowerment. I have 3 outstanding staffers in my office, and had one that was stolen by one of my colleagues. So that program works.
That would be theft.
It's called, friend theft. Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Let me just add, Councilmember, and thank you for those good statements. You should know that out of DYRS, there is a credible messenger program which operates with similar principles. And Director Lacey is basically following every child that is released from our care. When they are out in the community, if they're still under supervision, and he has some capacity to follow those children with credible messengers. And some good news in that is that the population of offenders in his care is small enough where we can do that. There are opportunities, however, because we have a whole another population of children in the care of social services, who we don't have as much jurisdiction over, but that is something that we continue to work with the courts about, so we're able to follow them. And I know your suggestion regarding creating employment, which is an option. But I think we all want to make sure that we are matching with all of the jobs available in the district. Some of those are public sector, some of those are ours, but even more of those are private sector. And how we are able to get folks into private sector jobs is important. Director McFadden's point about entrepreneurship and self-employment, though, should not be lost. We know that a number of people who are coming home, who are returning, they are a tough fit for traditional employment in some cases. And so if we can help them invest in an entrepreneurial idea that works, we have to see that as a viable option as well.
Councilmember Tranway.
Thank you. First, I want to say that it is of my opinion that for far too long we didn't invest in violence intervention and prevention. And so I want to thank the council, I want to thank the administration, Mayor Bowser and administration, also Office of Attorney General Carl Racine for taking some leadership. Because when I first got here as a councilman, we had $0 in violence intervention prevention, and now we have beefed that up to over $8 million. 11? There we go, Mr. McFadden. And I think that, over the years we've seen, the narrative that crime has been down, but we know, as for those who live in crime-ridden communities, that crime has never stopped in the district. And so I'm excited that we have put some boots to the ground. And I know that change don't happen overnight. As a former, we didn't call it violence interrupters back in that day, Mr. McFadden, but interrupted, it takes a lot of time, because I know between 2010 and 2017, we went from 30-something crews to over 77 crews in Ward 8 alone. And you're talking about the mental health issues, the trauma, the substance abuse, the disconnect from education. It piles up over time. And so we, as leadership in the city, have taken some action, but it won't happen overnight. And so I do want to thank everyone for getting involved, but we definitely have to do more. I want to give an extra shout-out to the Pathways program, because I think that's one of the most effective programs I've seen in a district in a long time, that really recruits the hardest to reach youth in a city and get them a cohort and work with them. I know some of them personally. Some of them stayed in my house. I raised some of them that's in the program, and I think that's a good group that we are using our resources to do something about to help them transform their life. And it don't happen overnight, but we're making some progress. And I send my condolences. I want to thank you, Attorney General Carl Racine and Councilman McDuffie, for coming to the scene to care for the family of Mr. Clarence Venable, who was on the front line and lost his life last week. I want to thank you all.
I just want to add one thing. Thanks for the kind words about Pathways. It is really a comprehensive approach to address these issues. I definitely thank all the council members who support the program, and would be remiss if I didn't talk about the promotional ceremony that's taking place on December the 13th. So we will follow up with invitations to that event.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. I think that may conclude all of our business. Looks like you have a handout there
Yes,
first.
I just wanted to, and I can I'll send it around the room. We have copies for council members and Attorney General. This is our latest green book that outlines opportunities for businesses to work with the district agency by agency. It's our look ahead for 2020, what district agencies will be procuring. So I suggest, I know a lot of you are probably contacted by people who have business ideas, who want to work in the district, and I suggest that you refer them to what the district plans to buy in the upcoming year. What's also reflected here is the increase in small business spending that we've been able to accomplish over the last 5 years. When I became mayor, we were spending about $330 million with our small businesses. Last year, we spent $847 million, and we're on track in the next couple of years to be over $1 billion. We know that's important because these businesses hire D.C. residents. They pay taxes in D.C., and our tax dollars circulate in the D.C. economy. So we are on track to do that. Finally, what's in this book are the opportunities. You know that one of our agencies can apply for a waiver from their CBE spending goals if they say they can't find a small business to do that work. Those are called waivers, and the waivers are also listed here. And we can direct people who want to work with the District of Columbia to look at those waivers, because those are opportunities for us to work with small businesses. So I'll say that. And finally, we will join the Committee on Public Safety and Justice to sign SAVRA, which has been a high priority for our administration to update our sexual violence laws to protect more families and people in the District of Columbia. And we'll be doing that on the first floor at 12 at noon. That's all we have.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
See you maybe not next month because that's the holidays, but soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.